laptop is only recording, so you can say.
Yeah, I think it's working.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, I'm recording now. Are you ready to do it together? I'm gonna take this, the descriptions, and just add it into this file. I'm doing it the same way that we were doing it last year, just because it's easier for me to see it in the console. So we have a JavaScript file. I have an index file that is importing that, and we're gonna just, like always, check that test that we're in the right place, that it's importing the right file. Yes. Okay. So we said we're using a constant with the name of balance, and it's set to 1,000. And the first says, if a user has less than 0, please log out. Please earn some money. That's rude. Okay. So if balance, what do we need to compare against this? Balance less than or equal to 0, then we log out. Please earn some money. And then it says. And here's where we can talk about, let's do it first with just a bunch of ifs. If the user has between 0 and 1,000, please log out. Your balance is looking okay. So if balance is bigger than 0 and less than or equal to, yep, 1,000, then we log out. Your balance is looking okay. Next one. If the user has between 1,000 and 3,000, so if balance is greater, then do we need the equals here?
No, because we already have to reduce.
Because you cannot include 1,000.
Yes. So it's between 1,000 and balance is less than or equal to 3,000. Then we log your balance is looking good. And the last one is if your balance is more or equal to?
No, it's greater than 3,000.
sorry, yeah, greater than 3,000
and 10,000.
less than or equal to 10, 1, 2, 3. Your balance is fantastic. And now, yes, the last one. If your balance is greater than 1, 2, 3, then we say your balance is amazing. And so this is our program, and right now we're setting our balance to 100. Let's read this as if we're at the browser and see what's gonna come out. So we have a variable that's named balance set to 1,000. We go into line number 9, and it says balance less than or equal to 0. Do we fall into this?
No.
No. Do we go into line 10?
No.
Not at all, right? We see the condition. I know my variable doesn't meet that. Let's move on. So the browser or the JavaScript compiler, which is the browser, will never see this line. So we move on to line 13. We have another condition. If balance is greater than 0, is our balance greater than 0?
Yes.
Oh, yes.
Yes. And it's an and. Do we need to check for the other one? Yes, because for the and, we always, well, not always, but if the first one is true, we definitely need to evaluate the other one. And so we check, okay, this part is true, and its and balance is greater than or equal to 1,000. So what is this side of the conditional? The first one, balance greater than 0, true. And the other one, true. And is only true if both values are true. So we fall into here. Does the program continue?
No, because
It does. It does.
because
It will log this, but it will continue. So we go into line 17. Is balance greater than 1,000? Where the computer, we check it's an end. It's not greater than 1,000. It's 1,000, and we don't have the equals. If we had this one here, we would evaluate the other one, but we don't have it. So this is false. I'm a computer. I don't care what's next. We move on. Line 21. Is balance greater than 3,000? No. Move on. Is balance greater than 10,000? No. Move on. So let's run and see that the computer is actually printing what we want. Yes, it's looking okay. And so if we had on line 17, where we're checking also for the 1,000, if we added the equals here, what is the console going to return? Exactly. It will return both of them because it falls into those two conditions. And even if it falls into one, that doesn't mean that it stops. It will just continue. So we can talk about another way of, so this is just a bunch of ifs, but we have, when we talk about this sort of logic, we can say if this, do this, else, if that condition is not met, then do something else. Yep.
I just have a question.
Mm-hmm.
If I no, because now even after the second condition is satisfied, we move to the next one that the program does. What if I don't write console.log and if I write return? Will it move to the next line?
So we can check that. Like for this, for example, we have two conditions in which the balance, in which it will fall into that, right? So, well, yeah, we can't return in the if because it's not a function.
Okay.
Yeah. So let's just take a look at that error message again. It says illegal return statement, which means that the return doesn't belong there. And returns belong only in functions. We will see that next. Yep. But because the ifs, if we want, for example, that it only falls into one, even if the condition in line 13 and condition in line 17 are met, if we want to build an if that only falls into one, we have this concept of the else if. And so let's have this one here and copy this conditional to see if this is enough to only get one of them. So this is in the premise that we only want it to fall into this one. Even if this is also true, we don't care. So let's see. Because when we have the else if, it will sort of return, but it will leave the if. Because the if and the else if are part of the same thing, of the same conditional, it will say you only need one statement of this to be true. And so if the first one is met, it will stop evaluating. So we could have all of our conditions that we have right now in different ifs into the same one. Let's do that. So if this is the first if, we can move into this to be the else if. Do you think we can have multiple else ifs?
Yes.
Yeah. And so we're going to put this one in here as well. Else if. And what happens if, like, let's say this one, we add another one and we say that balance is bigger than 10,000 but less than 50,000. And we have our balance to be 100,000. Will something be returned in this case?
No.
No. So it will check for all of them, right? It will go in here, this is false. 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 I won't return anything. Nothing. And so here's the place where we can add no conditional at all. If none of these previous conditions are met, you're rich. And that's the only one. So it didn't meet any of the previous conditions, it will fall into that one. Yep.
When in the future we are working on developing this kind of things, we should be as exhaustive as we can, right? So we should contemplate all the possible answers, because this actually is going to bring information from the HTML.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So we should, like, because this is just numbers, but if it's other type of answers,
Yeah.
can we make combinations in it? And like a matrix, right? I have A, B, C, and I have all the possible combinations of it.
Yeah. It depends very much on your case. Like, if you only care if the user has money or it has no money, you can only have two. But if you need specific things to happen when, you know, in this case, if you're in several ranges, then yes, you do need to do something like this and have a specific thing to handle that scenario. But there's another way. So are there any questions about, yep.
Can you go to the coding, please?
Yes.
My question is, in this case, the only thing that we are comparing is balance.
Yeah.
So it's like, in all the else, it's only balance.
Yeah.
Let's say I have more things to compare.
Yeah.
It's not only balance.
Mhm.
In that case, how do I answer this question? Should all the else be logically related in the sense, my first step is balance, blah blah blah. My second else is, I don't compare balance, but I have a different thing to compare.
Yeah, you can do that. You can definitely do that. So let's create an example of what's also related to money, currency. Like, let's say that we have something that's the currency is crowns. And so we maybe want to say that if your balance is 0 and the currency it's crowns, then return this. And if we say, you know, this is now dollars, it will be something else. But you can combine, you can create your conditionals in whatever way you need with different variables that you need. And you can also, if it's something you're going to use multiple times, you can say is rich and Danish. And this means like currency is this and balance is over 100,000 And then you can compare for that one. So you can store this condition somewhere else, comparing whatever it is that you need, but this else if can take in whatever you give it. It has no, yep,
Maybe I can ask you an example.
yes.
This is okay now. For constant balance, I give null.
Yeah.
Okay, so then where will you write the condition? You will write it in else, or you can create another else if and write the condition. Like if balance equal to null,
Yeah.
then blah blah blah.
So you can, what do you want to happen when the balance is null?
Just throw
Something
error
else,
message.
throw some error, yeah. So right now, if balance is null, do you think you can compare null to numbers?
No, the balance is not null. Okay,
Yeah,
the user doesn't give anything, so it takes it as null.
it takes it as undefined, yeah.
So undefined is different from null.
Yeah, a little bit. But we can do that. Like, let's say we just have this. And do you think undefined is greater than or equal to 0? It just doesn't know what to do with it. Yeah. And so we can check for that, right? Let's log what this condition returns. I do this all the time, like just to see what is being returned. And so I'm gonna write like, is balance greater or equal than 0? So missing English answer
Oh, that's
in
weird.
const declaration. Yes. So what do I need to do with that error?
No, you just
Well,
you,
they have
when
to fix
user doesn't enter anything, you just do a console.log saying,
Yeah.
please make sure you enter something. So whatever, unknown something or
Let's read that error again. Missing initializer in const declaration.
We can modify it.
We can modify it. Remember const? Remember I was doing this last time? I can do this, but I can do that with const because I can't change the value.
Not even if you make it like inside a function.
Right now we're in no functions, so no, because the constant, if we just declare it, it means that you're gonna add a value later. And because it's a constant, you can't do that. So, okay, we said balance right now, and balance, let's actually add another one to see what balance actually is. Balance. So balance is undefined because we just defined it, but it has no value. Is balance greater than or equal than 0? It's not. And so if there is no value, it will not fall into any of this, and it will fall into the last one. Yeah. Are there any other questions about this? If, else if? No? All good? And so I don't know if it's in the homework, but we can talk briefly about something that's called the case statement, because here you can see like we have, imagine that we want to have smaller comparisons like between 0 and 10 and 0 and 20. Like that would be a big else if. And there's another way of writing those, because sometimes you need to be very precise, and yeah, it's called a switch statement. It's a case statement in somewhere else, and this is very specific to a value, and then you actually add a case on what to do with all of those possible values that this could have. So the example that we have in the documentation is like, you give this is like fruits, I guess it's papaya, so if it's oranges, do this. If it's mangoes, do this. If it's, and so that's another way that you can write all of these statements, and this is for specific values that you put into this. So yeah, it's also another way to do this type of comparisons that actually need to be very like specific cases. It's not just that, is this value here, or is this value true or false? It's that, is this value specifically this, then do this. I think you'll do something with that in your homework, so I'll let you explore that on your own. Okay, so we can move on to functions now, and then we can combine what we've learned about the conditionals and the functions together. And I saw there are some people that are already using functions, and functions is just a very common thing to use it in programming because it helps you abstract logic into something that you can name and go back to. It's sort of the same as variables, but for complex calculations. So the advantages of a variable is that you can use it again and again. You have it there, it has the name, and you can revert back to it. So functions are an equivalent thing to that, and we will use them all the time. The very sort of syntax basics of the functions is that we write function, then the name of the function, which remember that naming is very important, and so this is wrong. You will never write a function that's my function because what does it do? It's just, I don't know. And then functions always have a return to them. And so let's just see what this does. This is going to run. And this will, when I call my function, which is when I call my function, we just add parentheses at the end. That's how we define, this is how we define the function, and this is how we call it. And so if you think about the browser and how does it work, it will go into your file, we'll get to line 42, and it will say, I'm creating a function, and the name is my function. And I will save that, and I will save the logic that has with it. But I'm not calling it, I'm just saving it. And then when it gets to line 46, it's like, okay, I'm going to go into that function that I saved earlier and execute what's in that function. If I don't do this, will this get logged?
No.
It won't, because I'm just declaring it. I'm just telling the browser, have knowledge of this, but I don't know when I'm going to need it. So if I do this, I'm going to comment all of the previous console logging that we've been doing before. So if I go back to this, it's nothing. Even though I added this console log, it's not returning anything. And so if now I'm going to say that I'm going to call my function, will this log?
Yes. Third test.
Yeah. Because right now, this line is being executed. Before, no. Now, executed. And so for the return function, if I say, let's do some calculation here, and let's going to say that this multiplies by 2. And we're going to take in a parameter. Wait, I always forget which one's the argument and which one is the parameter. So we're going to read it together. I have it in, 1 second. Yes, so in the function, the variables that your function is going to take in are called parameters. And the values that you send to are arguments. It's just a way to differentiate them, but you can live without this knowledge, but it's just nice to know. I always forget, but this is when you take them in and they have no value yet, parameters. The values that you send them, arguments. And so we're going to have this function take in a parameter. And in this case, we just need to name it. So this is going to take in something. We don't know what it is, but it's going to be a number. And then we're going to say that number times 2. And then we're going to, if I run this, if I save this, is anything going to happen? No. So what is line 46 doing?
So the function.
Not doing anything.
Mentioning that there is a function named one.
Yeah, it's calling a function that doesn't exist.
Yeah.
So that won't work. And if I send this, we're gonna go into line 42, save that logic somewhere, get into line 46, call the function, and
Where
then
is this one? Where you have,
Undefined.
It will know that there is a number which multiplied by 2, but it will not show anything because we are not telling him to show anything.
we're not telling you to show anything, and also
what is number?
What's number? Yeah. we're not sending anything. But even if I do, if I say this, my argument is 2. And so we're gonna go into here. This is now 2. 2 times 2. Will anything show up in the console? No. Will number be modified?
Maybe modified and stored somewhere, but we cannot see it.
Yeah. And so let's go into here. Nothing. But functions, like I said, they return something. And we don't need to console log it because what we want is just to tell you that this function that you called now did this. And this is changed. Is the value number changed?
We are passing an argument for number to be 2. So yes.
So the number will be the same. 2 is 2, and we're never, this is just the argument, right? The function is returning this, and we can save that somewhere. Times 2. And so what is going to be this variable? Yeah, because what we're doing now is saving the return value of the function. And so if I only call it, this function will get called. And it will do this calculation, but we're not saving it anywhere. And so even if I do, if I do a console log of the return value of this function, this will be 4. We're just logging this. It's not we're still not saving it anywhere. We're just logging that the function was called, it did what it needed to do, and we're logging the result of that. And so if I don't do this, what do you think is going to get logged in line 46?
Nothing.
What's the return value of the function?
This
If we don't have explicit return, it will always be undefined. Do you think the calculation was made?
Yeah.
Yes.
It was definitely made. It definitely got here. It multiplied the number times 2. It just didn't return anything. And so when we want to save the outcome of this, it's nothing. It's undefined. It doesn't know. And so what if we do that and then we say return hack your future? What's going to be on the console log? Because it will do, if we do like number, like we log a bunch of stuff, number times 8, or if we do all of the calculation before and we create some constants and the return function is the main thing of the function. The return value is the main thing. And so it will do all of this. It will definitely get there. It will execute, but that will not be what's going to be saved, what's going to be returned when you save that function. So if we do this again and save this into a variable.
So return is like printing anything which is right next to it.
So return is what your function is going to
Because
return.
we didn't put anything inside HYF.
No?
It's just content.
Yeah.
So
It can
it's
be,
just printing that anything which will be right next to it.
yeah, it's just, so not right next to the word return. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. So here it can be, we can say like return 100 times 8.
No. Yes.
Yeah, we can say is 100 bigger than, is 1,000 bigger than 100? And what's going to be the return value of that?
True.
Let me log this. It's going to be true. So the return is what your function is going to, is what it executes at the end. So if we have the return here, I think it will complain because it will never get to this. What you're saying in the return is you're done. Whatever I'm doing in this function, if I'm saying return, that means that this function is done doing whatever it needs to do. I think this will, it won't log anything, right? It gets here, it returns, it calculates the value of the return, and then it says, I'm a function. If I see return, I will calculate what's next to it, and then I'm out.
Yeah, only when I do a console.log, the return will actually be displayed, right? Or else it will not be.
Can you say again?
Only when I do a console.log, the return will be displayed.
Yes.
Or else it's just going to be somewhere. It's not going to be displayed, right?
Yes. But that's only to see it in the console. Yes. Yeah. Because if we want to say, let's say that we want this value of times 2, let's create a meaningful function and actually have it, number times 2, and we're saying that this is times 2, and then we want to do something with that. We're going to say that I'm going to use the backticks that we talked about last time, if I can find them here. And I'm going to say that I'm going to create another function that's actually my number. So I can change it. And then if I say number here, what am I sending to the function? I'm going to sending in the value of the variable that I created in line 46, right? So I want to say number times 2 is and so we can now, if I change this to 10, my argument is 10, my parameter is 10, it gets here 10 times 2, it returns that, it saves that into this times 2 variable, and then we use that value to do this. Let's do it again without the return. Did it do the calculation?
Yes.
It did. But because there's no return, it's undefined. And so we call this is undefined.
Because we didn't write return, so function is not working, but everything else is working.
Yep. Yep. And so, because even if we do, the log of this, is something going to change in the output that we're printing in line 48?
No, but for function it requires return.
Exactly.
Yes.
What's the return value of the function right now?
Undefined.
It's undefined. Yeah, it's calling another function, but it's undefined. We can create another function. Yeah, you know what? Let's not do that yet. But this is still undefined. The number is printing because we're calling the console log. But since the return value is not there, it's not doing what we want it to do. And so with the homework that you did last week, can you imagine what your functions would be like? Can you see like how you would create or structure a function like the age divide? What would be the name of the function in that case?
Calculate age.
Yeah, exactly. And what would it take in?
The age. I mean the information that we have.
Two parameters for the input.
Yeah.
The year of the birth and also year of the future.
Yeah, so you can have also as many parameters as you need. We can move this function into, like, let's say we want to take in, yeah, not multiply, but let's create a function with multiple parameters. So just multiply or add or whatever, and we're going to take number, yeah, for A and B. And I want to return,
Can we do the age thing because we can relate.
yeah.
Relate a bit better.
Can someone help me remember what that was doing?
Yeah, sure. It will. We should give a future date and we should give the date. It's just a subtraction inside the function. We give two values.
Okay, and so the first value is the year of birth,
Yeah.
and the second one is current year or something like that? A future year. Okay, and this is going to return the future year minus year of birth. Do you think, you know, another way of doing it is just like result or age? Yep, that's better. Very, very good. And we take this, we do this here, and we return age. And then, how do we call this function?
Calculate
Calculate.
And then we say, I'm gonna do mine, and then big year next year for me. And so we're gonna take this 1990, this is here, and so let's put this into a variable and log it. And I'm going to, so we can do this. And then if we say we also want the name, and we want this not to return the age, but to actually just, we can return a string that we built. So let's do backticks, yes. And we say the parameter that I get that's called name will be age in. So what's going to be logged on line 56?
just the value subtracted.
Just the value subtracted. Does anyone think something else? Let's take a closer look at the function. What's the return value?
It's a string.
It's a string. And so what's age at this point?
We don't have one parameter in the function, right? We have to give a name. Just
Very
have to-
true. Very true. Yes. So what was going to happen with this? Do you think this fails or this gives an error?
Undefined, the name is
Yeah. How do you think we could say, like, if name is not there, print, like, give me a name, otherwise I can't.
Yeah, another thing, if we can check if name equal to null or just if name.
Exactly. Now we can check, right? Because we have this knowledge of conditions now, we can say, you know what, if name, and if we only check for this, if we say if name,
True.
If the value inside the name is there, then it will be executed. Right?
yes. So we can do, if we do this, and I say, if we don't send anything, what's name? Undefined, right?
Yeah. So they put just undefined, I think.
And undefined, we have this concept of truthy and falsy values in JavaScript. And you have a way of checking for that it's called sort of typecasting. And so if we want to say what's going to be the value of undefined when we're thinking only about true and false, you can do this. So you just check for Boolean and the value. If I check for Boolean of a string, that's true. Because it only checks that it's present. If it's there and it's not null or undefined, it will be true. So it's just an easier way to check, like, if this is not undefined or not null, then go into this. But we could also check if name is something. Or actually, you know, if it starts with an A, if it's something else, you can do that. What if I wanted to say, yep,
I don't want to interrupt you, but I got a question. I did this exercise with the study group, so that's why I was able to do it with an HTML. But my question is, because I did function, calculate age, and then I opened the parentheses, and I didn't put the variables there as you did. Then I defined my variables and the operations. Can we, in this way of writing, for example, instead of having footer year, can I get an element from the HTML? Because I'm going to have an input, actually. So this kind of thing, like document get element by ID, and get the value. Can I have it here inside these parentheses?
Inside the parentheses, no, because there you only defined the amount of parameters that you're going to have. But if you think about the function of the place where you just isolate your logic, it doesn't belong there, right? Your function doesn't need to know where is this value coming from. So what you would need to do is, if you're getting the age from somewhere else or the name from somewhere else, you get it outside the function and then you send it
to the function.
To the function, yeah. So you do like get element by ID or
yeah. In this case, the guy
name,
that helped me did
value.
Inside the function has a local variable.
Yeah,
But
value
not
or
the-
something like that, and then that one we send that way. But the function doesn't need to know how you got that value. It can be static, it can be something that you put in the console, it can be anything. But it doesn't need to know that. So let's do, if name is not there, let's return please provide a name. And so one of the ways that we can do that is by negating what's in here. So we're going to say, what is going to be not name right now?
Yeah, so when the name is not given, then that should be executed.
And so if we're not sending it in line 58,
Yeah.
what is name?
Nothing, because there's nothing inside the statement.
And what's nothing in JavaScript?
Undefined.
Undefined. And what's not undefined?
True or false?
So what is the value on line 50?
True. True.
It's true.
True.
Yes.
Because undefined, it's a falsy value. If we negate a false, that's true. Right?
And you see the small script coming out of our brains like.
Please provide a name. So what's going to be age at this point? Which this is now like, this name of age is no longer correct, right? Because we're now returning the full string and it's no longer just the age. So I'm gonna just change that to result. So what's result here? With this params, please provide the name, right? Will it get to here?
No.
No, because it's already returned the string.
Please provide a name. Yes. And if we say now, Alicia, It will go here. Name is something.
So they
It will is not name. What's not name here?
It's false.
So it will try to take that value, which is a string of Alicia, me, the computer. A string is it true or false? It's true. What's not true? False. So if false, then I know I don't belong here. I'm gonna move on to the else and do all of this. Let's run it. Yeah, Alicia will be 30 in 2020. Bad example. What if I send an empty string?
This one is going to be
It will show
true.
Empty string is also a falsy value.
Oh.
It's something. It's not undefined and it's not null, but it's a falsy value. What if we change this to say that we want to check for the length? If name.length, what do we want to check for? If we want to like also, let's say if we say A, we're gonna be say like that's not a name. So this needs to be at least longer than 2,
Greater than 1.
Bigger than.
greater than 1. If I only send A, will it fall into this?
No.
will provide name.
I think it will provide the name.
Let's think about this condition again. If name.length is greater than 1, so,
No, okay.
and then not that, do you think I can do this? I can. Yeah,
So
Yeah.
no is yes.
yeah,
Yes, it is
Like
yes.
in
Minus,
line.
minus, plus.
Yes.
Kind of, yeah.
yeah. So we're gonna say the name length is bigger than 1. So in this case of 1 letter, we're going to hear, is name length greater than 1?
Yes.
Yes.
No,
No. It's,
Because it's not equal.
because it's not equals. So it's false.
Mhm.
And then we negate that. So true. Then we negate that again. False. Do we want this? I don't even know.
I don't know that. It's very complicated. It's going to confuse the whole concept right now. Maybe more in the future, maybe.
But I'm thinking when you say, look, if I program like this, it happens. That's what I do.
So right now we want to say if it's less than 1. Right? If I remove the negatives. If the length is less or equal to 1, we're going to say please provide a name, because to us 1 letter is not a name. So don't do that. It falls into the other condition, and then we can do stuff with that. Okay. Are there any questions about what we've seen so far? We know how to create a function. We know how to name a function. We know that we can take any number of params inside here. And this, you named this. I mean, we didn't talk about it, but you can think about this as the variables that you take in. So this can be like N, F, and you decide how to call this. But remember to always be very explicit about what you're sending so that it makes sense when you read it. Yep?
My doubt is, your name is a string that we are going to send.
Yes.
Suppose instead of name, I have a parameter which is Boolean by nature.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Okay. So my doubt is, if I do if here it is name, so just if name.
Yeah.
And maybe the next example is if Boolean.
Yeah.
If Boolean, so both is going to be, even if name is not a Boolean, it's going to be true, right?
Yes.
Okay, that's what
Yeah. So if we take in, for example, is older than 18, we can take this in and we can change this, for example, is older than 18. Please, you're old.
Yeah, so if, is older than 18 is by itself a boolean, because we will give a argument as true or false inside when we call the function. So if that boolean nature is going to be true, and if even if it's a string, it's going to be true.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so the if when we just give the variable name, the if is always going to take it as a boolean.
Exactly. That's exactly it. Because the if only knows how to work with booleans, it will try to take in whatever you give it, a number as well, and it will take it, try to convert it into a boolean value, and it does exactly what I showed you here. It does this boolean. If I say 1, that's true, but if I say 0, that's false. And this is just specific to JavaScript. So undefined, we know is false. Null, false. What about empty array? That's true. Why? No one knows. Empty object, true.
Maybe because there will be a space that is allocated, but it will not be used. Right? When you have an empty array, I don't know the hardware piece, but this is the logic. There will be some space that is allocated, but you won't use it.
There is always 0.
Maybe.
Maybe not 1, but there is always 0. Like 0 index.
Yeah.
There is space.
Yeah. Yeah. You learned that. It won't make sense. But let's take in that. We haven't done that. Let's take in an array as a param. I'm going to remove this, and I'm going to say that we're going to take a list of names, and this is going to be all the people that are going to be, that are born in that year, or something like that. Help me be creative. It's hard to think about these examples. So
it's okay, it's better if we have this one because we know what we're okay. Suppose there is something
Name
else
01, name
that we
02,
have
name
to
so on.
So we're gonna say that we're gonna return a sentence, and let me know if I'm going too fast. But try to be with me. So I'm gonna go through every item of the array and return the same sentence that we were building for each of the names that are in here. So we have 3. So we can, there's so many ways to do this.
What is the question? What is the problem?
The problem is I'm not sure how to do it, but I'm going to do it.
Sentence to make a sentence with every name in the array.
So we have this function that we'll talk about later, but it's called map, and it works on arrays, and it will let you go through each item of the array. Yep. Does that make sense? You take the array, and then we're going to say, for each item of the array, do this. And we're going to take in one single name. Let's just log this so that we know what's happening. We're looping through the array. And we're going to talk about for loops later, but this is just to give an example of how to take in an array as a parameter in a function.
So it means it shows every parameter, every index of array.
Exactly, yes. It's the same as us doing name. So how many items do we have in the array? How do we calculate that?
Array.length.
Yes. Name array dot length. And this is the so we can go through all of the items in there, right? And so right now we have 0, 1, and 2. Items is 2. Correct? Even though the length is 3, which just this is like items index. And then this is like saying name array in 0, do this, name array in 1, do this, name array in 2, do this. So it's similar to that, only map is doing that for us. It will go through each item in the array. And so I'm gonna say here that we're gonna build that same, wait, the backticks here. We're gonna take in the name, which in here we're already in one index, will be, we stopped calculating the age, but do you think we will calculate the age at this stage in the return statement? Do you think here we can say, let's see.
Why don't we calculate them?
You can do that. We can do that as well. But let's just see if calculating there works. What's the function returning?
It's string.
It wasn't returning anything.
Oh, and it does it for us.
Oh, it's
Very nice.
it's a function inside the function.
Yeah, this was a mistake. This is a bit more. You'll learn to do this, but this is just, it is like a function inside a function. So we're telling it what to do with each of the things, build this string. And then this returns an array itself. You will need it a lot.
Now,
Yeah. But this is just to, we can have arrays as parameters as well.
yes.
And we can have all of the things that we've learned about variable types, like objects. So we can have objects, Boolean strings, numbers, anything as parameters in the function and use them and return something else. It doesn't need to be, like if we're only taking strings, it needs to return a string. No, it can only take strings and return a number. It can only take in just whatever suits your function best.
Now the if statement is going to evaluate as Boolean, right?
Mhm.
So now it is not going to work the same way for arrays because it's always going to be true if my array is empty also.
Yeah.
So then I have to change the condition in the if and give accordingly.
Yes.
Okay.
And for that, we check for the length of the array, right? Like, yeah. Yeah. So let's do some exercises. Here. We talked about what is a function. Arguments are the ones that we defined in the function or the ones that we send in? The ones that we send. Very important. You need this knowledge. Function creation, parameters versus arguments, the return value. So we can talk about this, the math stuff. So JavaScript has a lot of functions in there by default. So, for example, there is this function called math.random, which gives you a random number between 0 and 1, I think. So, right. Yeah. So you used it. Yeah, that's the same function. So you know about
No,
it.
we didn't use it, we just copy pasted
So if we say calculate random value, and we return math.random, do we need a parameter? We don't, right? Because math.random, it doesn't take any parameters. We're just wrapping the function.
We have 0 to 10 numbers or 0 to 10.
So it will return, if we want to return a string, we can do that here as well. But in this case,
Return random numbers
Yeah.
out of how many numbers?
Yeah.
The range.
What
the
is
range,
yes.
I think by default is just between 0 to 1.
Okay, just.
Yeah, if we don't send anything, so it will just send like a random decimal thing, I think.
Otherwise you have to kind of override it with something else.
Yeah. So this is a random,
That was.
0 to 1.
yeah. And so if we want to do like, we want to say a random times 10, it will still be random, right? But yeah, now it's 6. Yeah. And we can, if we want to round that up, math, JavaScript, math, round function. Math.round. Easy. Math.round. And does it take in a
What's the
param?
function is math here.
The object is math, the function is round. And so the math.round function takes in one parameter. And so we're going to send in the random number that we get here times 10. What's happening here? What is the order of how we calculate things?
First
inside.
Right? We're a computer. We go into here. We first get this. Then we multiply this by 10. And then we round that up. So now we're getting actually
Whole numbers.
random numbers. And we can, if we, say that this is times 100, now we're getting
Because random in return between 0 and 1.
Yeah.
That was the one.
exactly, yeah. So how many functions are we calling here? What was the first function that you learned in JavaScript? We use it all the time.
Console log.
Console log. Console log, and we're always sending arguments to console log, right? And it uses them to return to the actual console. So first function, console log. Second function, calculate random value. Third function, math.random. Fourth function, math.round. And so console log takes in a value. Calculate random value doesn't take in anything. Math.random doesn't take in anything. And math.round takes in this value. And there are many functions that you already have in JavaScript that you can use. The math module has a bunch of math functions in it. So now let's do some exercises.
I have another question.
Yep.
What does that math.floor thing do?
It rounds down.
Down.
So yeah, so if you have a value that's 3.1, it will be 3. Math.floor will be 3, and math.round it will be 4.
3.7. 7 will be 4. 0.5 and
We can try. So math.round with 3.7 is 4. And math.floor with 3.7, it will be 3. So round rounds up and floor rounds down. What happens with 3.5? I don't know.
It should normally go down.
Yeah.
That's what they told us. Classes,
But this one goes up.
I remember that from math, but nothing here works exactly the same.
Yeah. So there is a function exercise in the lesson plan to create a get circle area, and it should have the radius of the circle as a parameter and return the circle area. And it has what happens if we don't return anything in the function. Does that exercise make sense? Are there any questions about that? And then the second one, a function to calculate Celsius to Fahrenheit, and it takes in the Celsius param and then returns the Fahrenheit. Yep.
Just like adding groups.
Yeah, and this one's like the first one returns the circle area. So what would you expect the type of that return value to be?
Number.
A number, yeah. This time we're not console logging things or creating strings. That return value of that function should be a number that we calculated with the formula. And same thing with the Celsius to Fahrenheit. It should return the temperature in Fahrenheit. So both numbers. I gonna give you 10 minutes.
How do you write pi? Pi?
You want the we can look it up here.
There's a function. Or
Yeah,
we should
there's a
record
math
the value
function.
of pi, 3.0.
Yeah, but that's like hardcoded.
Math pi.
Yeah, but we don't have that key.
That's what I'm asking.
But how will that? How will
It's a math.pi.
Oh.
So math.pi will return pi.
The value
Yes.
of pi.
I'll just run it to see. So math.pi. Yeah.
Okay.
It's the exercise on functions. The two functions that you need to create. It's inside the lesson plan. I can send the link again. Class 12.
Should be find it at least.
It's this one.
I have it now.
Yep.
In this case, we know that return is going to be a number because we're working with numbers. So we don't have to define it as anything. Just area is equal to blah blah blah, return area.
Yeah.
So we don't have to define it or.
The number that you're going to calculate? No. And we have the break at 2, right? Yeah. Yep.
I have language thing. Si yo quiero agregar el radio al cuadrado en inglés, ¿cómo lo busco? How it's in English?
El radio al cuadrado. Pero quieres el nombre de...
Porque quiero elevar el radio al cuadrado. Tiene que haber una función, porque hay raíz cuadrada de...
Ajá. Exponen... ¿No es el exponencial? Radio. Sí, creo que sí.
Exponential.
Yes.
Exponential. Sometimes it happens.
Yep.
Only
thought, and what about 2 stars?
Yeah, that will work. I just did radius cross radius twice.
Yeah.
But our power 2
Yeah.
is not working. It's kind of
Yeah. Okay. I thought that would work. But otherwise, there's a math function where
If I want to use that math and this math,
you use all the maths.
so what are that math functions?
I think it's exponential. Did someone find it? Like there's a math function? No.
Or what?
For
our power 2
the exponential.
times radius.
Yeah, map point pow, and then
Ah, yeah,
you
pow.
open the parenthesis and put radius,
Yeah.
and then you put the exponential, which is 2.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you need to make like the arguments.
Yeah.
That's the one I have to find in Spanish.
Math.pow.
Matemática, funciones en JavaScript. I literally did it in Spanish. But you
How
can put,
function in JavaScript?
yeah, mat point how, and that will give you the Java.
In 2 minutes, we'll do it together right before the break.
And then you have to use radius and so.
Exactly. So like this.
Just for curiosity, if I want to know how function is constructed, how do I search that?
If you want to
If I
know,
want to know how math.power was constructed.
you want how it's built inside. I'm not sure if you can, but I think
Because here it's just accept. If I use it as a simple function, it's accepting base and exponent 2 parameters. So I just want to know if I can figure out something in the function.
yeah. I mean, I think the documentation that you need is here. So if you look it up at math.pow, and then it says sort of a description, but I don't think you can see. You can. Yep, actually, it's here. Demonstrative implementation, and this is how it's done.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, it's long.
Oh yeah, but just in make some sense of the superficial sense.
Yeah. Okay, let's do it together. Again, I'm gonna copy this and just put it into my function. So we said create a function called getCircledArea. We know how to create a function. Function getCircledArea. It should have the radius of the circle as the parameter and return the circle area. So we're getting the radius as the parameter and return the circle area. And I think you did it in different ways. So can someone tell me one of the ways that you did it?
Yeah, I just wrote the formula of the area and I just did return.
Return, yeah.
Pi r
So
square.
you did like this,
Yeah.
and here you added, I saw you added a floor to
Yes.
that, right?
And then I wrote it with math power as well.
Okay. So we don't need the floor, so pow, and then we take radius
Come on to
2. And then we return the,
Math dot
pi r square. So it's asterisk.
All right.
dot pi.
math.py. Right? Is this correct? And it says here, what happens if we don't return anything in the function?
Undefined.
It will return undefined. this would still get calculated, but we won't return it. So let's just const radius 10, and then const area, get circle area with the radius that we created, and then log area. Let's see what's returned here. Yep, sure, that sounds correct. Yes?
Yes, when I just declare inside function, I declare const area semicolon and area equal to that, it shows error.
Yeah.
Why is that? It's this, I mean, yeah, why is that?
Yeah, we saw that error at the beginning of the class. Remember, I was trying to do something like that? And it's because if you're setting a const, you're expected to not change that value, right? Because it's a constant. So you should always have the declaration and the initialization in the same line. We can only do what I was doing with a let, because in let lets you change the value later.
Okay, because just const area will have, what will the value of the area be? It's
Undefined.
So we cannot even change undefined. That itself is considered as a value.
Yeah. Yeah. So are there any questions about the get circle area function? Is that fine? Yep.
I have a doubt.
Yep.
So I have written the function.
Yep.
And I just called out the function get circle area, and with brackets I have written the value.
Yes.
That's it. I didn't use that const radius.
So you did like this.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
Single sentence.
That's fine. That's fine as well. Yep. I'm just doing this because then there's only one place where I need to change it. I mean, it's the same. It's the same, really. Yeah. And then the other one is Celsius to Fahrenheit. Celsius to Fahrenheit. And this takes in
Celsius.
the Celsius. And to have a parameter called Celsius, it should return the temperature in Fahrenheit. So return Celsius, and this is like times, someone tell me, I don't remember.
Yeah, 1.8 times Celsius plus 30
1.8
times, yeah.
times Celsius
Plus 30. This within parenthesis plus 30.
plus
32.
32?
Yeah.
Weird. Okay. And Celsius 35, and Fahrenheit is Celsius to Fahrenheit with the Celsius here. Log Fahrenheit. Yeah. So if we did, we now know that if we didn't have the return on any of this, even if I was doing this calculation outside, like this will be, nothing will get returned, right? Because we need the returns in the function so that that's what's actually saved or calculated in, not calculated, saved into our different variables like this and like this, line 78 and line 88. Are there any questions about functions that we've seen so far? Does it make sense? Can you think of useful ways that you can use functions and conditionals now? I saw while I was looking at the exercises, I think there's a really good one that just makes it all a little bit more grounded. And so this is a function to determine if a user is authenticated or not. And it takes in a user role, and we're saying that if the user role is an admin, or if the user is, what are we checking in here?
Not the guest.
That is not guest, right? And we're saying it's logged in, and then if it's admin, we return true, or if it's logged in, we return true. Otherwise, we return false. So I think this is a good way that you can start thinking also about more practical ways to use functions and conditionals, because this is the way that you use them when you're building real applications. Cool. So we have the break now. If you have...
Small question.
Yep.
When I wrote that function for get circle area,
Mhm.
I didn't get undefined value. If I don't put any value inside it, I had none. And it says none, NaN.
So that means not a number.
Not a number.
And
Yes, because I am expecting number out of it. So
yeah, so it will fail. That's an error of you're trying to do a number specific operation and you're sending me not a number, so I don't know what to do with that.
okay, so
Yeah.
it will not say undefined. It will say none.
Okay, so I'll see you in like 25 minutes. Yeah, if you have questions, let me know and we can work together.
That's cool. Very clear in terms of the global and local scope. I'm talking about the lexical scope. There's like an coding version running, but I decided to like make my own example to make it a little bit simpler because I feel like this is like a pretty long-winded.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is like my example right here in terms of lexical scope. So what I want to explain is, for example, let's say we have a function. It's called example. Inside we have a if statement, and if it's true, then run this code, and then to log it, it's going to return 5. That's all fine. That's all fine. But if I set it to false, then something interesting happens. Let's say, so set it to false, it's going to undefined. And this is like the part of how the variables variable hosting. So what it does at runtime is it takes this variable and moves it to the top, and then leaves this there. And you see that now it's just undefined because it's assign a value. This is like a simple example of variable hoisting.
Yeah.
So you think this would be...
Yeah. And it doesn't work if you do it with let?
Yes. So if I do it with let, let's say... so I have the little example. So and then I talk about like the block scope. So I try to do the same thing. Then it's going to on reference error because it is a block scope and it's only inside these brackets.
Yeah. No, I think it's super interesting.
Cool. Because like I saw the example and for me it was like I felt it was maybe a little bit too advanced. I wanted to like do like basic as possible.
Yeah.
Because for me like it took over a year to understand what lexical scope was about. So yeah.
Yeah. No, I think it looks good. It looks great.
Great. Yeah, and I practiced this yesterday because